Welcome back to 110 Daily on the 110 Sports Network. Josh Doring, Chris Brown, thank you for being here with me. The final five, it is actually 5 games this time around. It's not 6. We didn't get too excited. We went with 5. The obvious place to start is with New Year's Day, January 1st, 4 p.m., 8 p.m., the college football playoff games. Let's start with the first one. Alabama, number 1 Alabama versus number 4 Notre Dame at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Mr. Doring, Alabama, Notre Dame, who you going with?
Alabama.
Hey, you know what? I need you to give more respect to Notre Dame real quick. Okay?
Really?
No, I don't need that from you at all.
I was going to say, I'm wondering what was coming next after that.
I don't need that from you at all.
Not going to bore everybody with explanation as to why Alabama is the better football team. That's fairly obvious. The only thing I'll add, they've only lost once in the semifinal. That was to Ohio State that first year when Ohio State won the national championship. They don't lose this game.
No.
And it's typically not very close. Now, it's probably closer than you would think because your memories are they just dominate everybody, and some teams hung in there to a certain extent. But their shortcomings have been when you go get to that next game. This has not been an issue aside from that sort of just great culmination of Ohio State that was probably better than they actually got respect for at that moment in time because of the way their season went. But that's the other thing I'll add is that Alabama hasn't had trouble. They don't lose to teams they're not supposed to, by and large, in the playoff era especially. They're losing to Clemson.
Right. Which is a respectable loss, I would argue, at least the last 3 seasons. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to overthink this one. Right. If there's an offense right now that terrifies me more than a Clemson-led offense with Trevor Lawrence, it's probably the Alabama offense. And right, Trevor Lawrence terrifies me like nobody else terrifies me in the sport right now. But that Alabama offense, it's talking about Alabama being terrifying because their offense is so incredible is not something that we usually talk about. Right. It used to be that it was Georgia and Alabama in a 14-8 SEC championship game. Alabama just scored 52 and needed all 52 to win. I don't think Notre Dame has anywhere near the offense to keep up with Alabama. Of course, they only put 10 up on Clemson. I would be surprised if this game is close, to be honest with you. They just put up 52 on Florida, right? Now Florida put up 46, but like we talked about previously, Florida has Kyle Trask and then multiple All-American weapons. Notre Dame has Ian Book, which no disrespect to Ian Book, but he's not on very high on my list of terrifying college football quarterbacks right now. So I'm going with Alabama as well. This is the best team in the country. They are terrifying, and like you said, I'm not going to bet on them to lose in the semifinal of the college football playoff because they typically don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna do anything bold. I'm not gonna do anything crazy. I'm with you guys. The only thing I'll add is Florida did showcase the blueprint for how to beat Alabama's defense. Now the problem is Notre Dame has some good defensive pieces, but knowing that blueprint and being able to execute it are very different things for one, and for another, even if they are able to slow down Alabama's, even if they are able to beat Alabama's defense to some degree, not beat, but limit to some degree, Notre Dame doesn't have the offense to keep up with that. They would have to establish the run and the pass. It's been 2 months since anybody has been able to get anything on the ground against the Crimson Tide. So there you go. That's my addition to the conversation, but same conclusion, nothing else to say.
Trivia time. What's the fewest number of points that Alabama has scored this season?
38.
Have you looked this up already?
No.
That's correct. They scored 38. Oh! They scored 38 at Missouri in the week 1 of the season. Trivia time part 2. How many times have they scored more than 50 points?
3.
Nope.
6.
You're on fire. You need to go buy a lot.
Oh.
You need to go buy a lottery ticket. They
No,
beat
this
Texas
is unfair.
A&M 52-24. They beat Ole Miss 63-48. They beat Kentucky 63-3. They beat LSU 55-17, Arkansas 52-3, and then Florida 52-46 in the SEC championship game. They've only scored less than 40 once. That was at the beginning of the season. That offense is absolutely ridiculous, and I expect it to continue to be that way. Second game of the night, I think the one that we're hoping is the more competitive football game of New Year's Day. Clemson, Ohio State. Death, taxes, and Clemson and Ohio State playing at some point in the college football playoff. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, maybe 1 and 2, and definitely number 1 in Trevor Lawrence, but possibly number 2, Justin Fields in the NFL draft. 2 really awesome quarterbacks, of course. Ohio State, the talk of the town, and nobody seems to think they deserve to be here. Josh, or we'll start with Chris this time. Chris, starting with you, the second semifinal on New Year's Day, Clemson, Ohio State. Who you got?
Yeah, it's very tempting for me to pick Ohio State here. They certainly have some motivation being put 11th on the ballot in the final coaches poll, but that is another matter.
That is
dumb.
Okay,
yes.
That's why we had to wonder what Davos what he was doing.
Right. So it's tempting for me to pick Ohio State here, but the more and more I looked into this matchup and looked at some of the numbers and some of the different factors, the more and more I couldn't go that direction. The more and more I'm convinced that this is going to be a Clemson victory. Justin Fields is coming off the worst game of the season. 114 yards, 2 interceptions in the Big Ten championship against Northwestern. He now has 5 interceptions in his last 3 games. He's been dealing with a sprained thumb. So you might look to Ohio State's running game, but the Clemson run defense, I think, is going to be too good for the Buckeyes to reasonably hope for anything like what they got from Trey Sermon in their last game, which was incredible.
Yeah, because I don't think it's reasonable for anybody to expect that from anybody ever.
Yes. That should be yes. Nobody's going to do that again. You can never put that expectation on anybody. But the Clemson run defense is good enough that I don't think they can expect anything huge from him. Nothing like that, obviously. Right? I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to have that many issues against the Big Ten's worst passing defense. Justin Fields will be able to make some big plays. I think it'll make this I think this can absolutely be a very competitive game. I'm not like saying that I'm convinced now it's going to be a blowout, but in looking at all these factors, I keep getting more and more convinced, given some of these recent trends and some of the factors in this matchup, that it's going to go toward Clemson.
I think Clemson has the 2 best players on the field, at least as of recent.
Yeah.
Travis Etienne in the backfield, 10 rushes, 124 yards in the ACC championship game. Of course, Trevor Lawrence is the best player on every field he stepped on pretty much since he was like 8. And there's some concern, right? You're not absolutely terrified by the Ohio State offense right now like you typically are. Now, they could come out and put up 38 on the board and nobody would be all that surprised, right? Justin Fields could have a game he's shown he's capable of having. And I still don't think it would have been enough. I still think Clemson will score 45 in that game. I'm going with Clemson as well. To your point about Trey Sermon, Trevor Lawrence led Clemson's offense to 34 points, passed for 322 yards, and he still didn't pass for as many yards as Trey Sermon ran for in the Big Ten championship game. That's just an absolutely preposterous thing to think about. 331, 29 carries. Absolutely ridiculous. Northwestern did such a good job on Justin Fields that they forgot that Trey Sermon existed at all. Like really at all. 399 yards of total rushing. Anyways, I digress. I think Clemson, like you said, Chris, is their offense is going to be too overpowering. The thing that has made Clemson look so convincing since that Notre Dame loss and Trevor Lawrence coming back. Yes, Trevor Lawrence has come back, and that's always helpful when trying to be convincing. But they haven't given up more than 17 points since that Notre Dame game. And that was even before Trevor Lawrence missed that game. You had some, the Boston College game, their defense wasn't great at all in the first half. They gave up, 23 to UVA, 21 to Syracuse. the defense has gotten healthier, more locked in, and when you have the weapons at your disposal, like Trevor Lawrence, like Travis Etienne, like Amari Rodgers, they've got so many weapons all over the field, and the best quarterback in the country to throw to those weapons. Hopefully it's close, but I think Clemson takes the cake here, and we get Alabama-Clemson in the national title game.
I've got Clemson close.
You think?
Yes.
Tell me why.
Feel very strongly.
Clearly.
First of all, I continue to harp on this point too. Ohio State has not had, by and large, Ohio State hasn't had their team. They're expected to get most of these 22 players who missed the Big Ten championship game back. And important players, not just special teams guys. We're talking Chris Olave, who makes everything easier for those receivers who just didn't know what they were doing, and when they all got bumped up in the pecking order and had different responsibilities. And it didn't help that, Justin Fields had the thumb injury and was just not playing well in a big game again. They got bailed out by Trey Sermon. But I don't think we have seen – actually, I'm just going to say it. We have not seen Ohio State play their best game and their best football. I think we're going to get it. I still don't think it's going to be enough, but I expect this to be very similar to last season's game where one of these teams just had to lose, and you pretty much had them on the same level.
You think that right now Clemson and Ohio State are on the same level?
No, I think Clemson's a half step ahead.
So they're not on the same level then?
In the same ballpark.
Okay. I think the unappreciated part of only getting to play 6 games is that it's impossible to be your best after 6 games. Getting to play 12 games versus 6, forget the resume part of this.
Right.
Clemson having gotten to play double the games that Ohio State has gotten to play means something. And to your point, Josh, it's 5 games. Truly, it's 5 games anywhere close to healthy. Right? So I think if anything, that's a distinguisher that's a difference maker for me. That I'm not sure there's I think that Clemson can get to a level that Ohio State's not capable of getting to
I would agree with that.
Just simply because Clemson has played twice as many games.
Mm-hmm.
It will be a completely different beast than the team that really struggled to beat Northwestern. I think that's and there's some other, Justin Fields wanting to, he's just sort of been losing to Trevor Lawrence since he got to college, like starting at the Elite 11 football camp where Trevor Lawrence was they do a YouTube series every year. It's very interesting. But even from then where Trevor Lawrence was the winner of the Elite 11 or whatever, all the way up to now, it's been there's Trevor Lawrence, and now all of a sudden the Jets have ruined the narrative. Oh, the Jets have ruined the future of their franchise when Justin Fields will still be on the board after the Jaguars pick Trevor Lawrence, right? He'll still be on the board. If I was Justin Fields, that would be fueling my fire for sure. Mm-hmm. Is that all of a sudden I'm one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and a team that is now in a position to get me has ruined their future? That would piss me off for sure. I expect him to be better. I expect Ohio State to be better. I still expect Ohio State to lose. But I think it's a fair point to not... I think it's unfair to write Ohio State off as a team that won't be competitive in this game, especially if the justification is, well, they only beat Northwestern by 12 when they didn't have a lot of their guys, and a tweaked thumb is having several weeks to recover from a tweaked thumb is a helpful thing, or I guess it's just a week, but the point is still the same. So that's college football playoff. Real quick, since we're not going to be able to... Who's your national champion? Since we're not going to have a... Wait, are we going to have another... We'll have another show.
Yeah.
We'll have another show. Never mind.
We got time to figure that out.
We don't need to talk about that whatsoever. But that's the college football playoff. Let's continue on. We got some NFL as well as some college basketball action over the weekend. We'll go to the one college NFL game that's on our Final Five this week. Dolphins, Bills. Josh, who you got?
Bills still have the number 2 seed to lock up. The idea of wanting to play well heading into the playoffs. They've looked spectacular the past couple weeks. Chris and I talked about that yesterday. I completely sold on this team. If they want to win this game, they will, and I think they want to win this game.
Amen. I was really impressed by them on Monday. We talked about it on Monday. I wanted to see them go and dominate that football game. They went out and they dominated that football game from start to finish like they should have. Maybe not completely from start to finish, but the point was this is a good football team. I wanted them to go and take care of the Patriots like they should. And while, the Dolphins are still... Nobody expected the Dolphins to be in the situation that they are in right now. And that's a testament to everything that's going on down in Miami. But I think the Bills are on another level. There's an incentive to win this game. And nobody wants to enter the playoffs on a loss, right? Especially in a game that, if the Steelers lose this game in Week 17 without Big Ben, it feels a little different than if the Bills lose it when they could lock up the 2 seed and beat another solid team going into the playoffs. So I've got the Bills as well.
Yeah, I do as well. I mean, I think that there's a huge advantage, of course, for them getting that 2 seed, guaranteeing a home game in the divisional round if they win the wild card round game. The only thing I will say is, though, yesterday Sean McDermott wouldn't reveal their plans of whether or not they're going to go with their starters on Sunday or not. I'm expecting that, it's one of those things where, like you said, Josh, if they want to win this game and put those guys out there, they will. I'm not 100% convinced, so that gives me that they're going to go with their starters or give their starters a lot of time. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a big enough of a factor for them that they're going to be motivated enough to go out there to end this regular season on a high note as well. It's also in Buffalo in January. I saw this stat. Not that this means all that much because we're talking about it. Yeah, we're talking about a very different Miami team than past, of course, but the Dolphins are 1-10 in games where the kickoff temperature is below 50 degrees since 2007. It's a very random stat. I just saw it. It's for whatever that's worth, probably not all that much, but it's in Buffalo in January, and I think the Bills will be motivated enough, even though I do still have some wonderings about what they're going to do as far as who's going to see action.
That might have something to do with just how bad the Dolphins have been over the last 13 years. But
winning on the road.
Right.
In New England.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. Right. So those 10 losses, the Bills were bad for most of the 2010s too. So what do you think? How many of those 10 losses occurred in Foxborough?
It's probably got to be at least 7.
It's got to be, right? At least.
But if you get them early in the season, it might not have been under 50.
Right.
So there could have been a couple of years where they didn't actually play that game that would fit into that category.
Sure. It depending on if it's the second half of your schedule game against them in Foxborough, or if it's the first half game against them in Foxborough. But it has to be quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Let's go over to college basketball. Never thought that I'd be talking about the top 25 team well into the top 25 at this point. Team Minnesota taking on Wisconsin as one of these Final 5 games, but that's where we are. Not only are they beating Iowa, but they're putting up 81 against a Michigan State team that just is not good right now. They get another, because it's the Big Ten and because the Big Ten is just a gauntlet. For what it's worth, they're in the midst of a 6-game streak against top 25 teams. They play Michigan and Iowa twice in that stretch. Next up is Wisconsin on the road, Minnesota on the road at Wisconsin coming off a loss to Maryland at home, by the way. Not a good look. Chris, who you got? Minnesota, Wisconsin on the 31st tomorrow.
I'll go with Minnesota. right? They're coming off of a very decisive win over Michigan State, which of course they've gotten off to a really bad start to conference play. But Minnesota, I've been really impressed with how quickly they have come together, despite the fact that they've got 3 transfers in their starting lineup, a freshman as their 6th man. The unique circumstances of this season, it's just gelling. It's coming together really well for this team. And they've made their case early in conference play. They should be included in that ever-growing list of Big Ten contenders. Their lone loss is on the road to Illinois. Meanwhile, I want to be optimistic. I want to be high on Wisconsin. This is a team that I have liked, but that's bad. Maryland at home, they allowed Maryland to shoot 50% from the field. They have now lost to 3 teams that are outside of the top 35 at Ken Palm. I'm going to have to see more from Wisconsin before I'm, willing to sort of, I'm not saying get back on their train, but before I'm willing to sort of, I'm down on them, and I'm up on Minnesota. I'm high on Minnesota right now. So I'm going Minnesota. I think they're going to pull off the upset here in this game tomorrow.
Josh?
Wisconsin. I expect them to be better and not repeat what happened against Maryland. And also, it's just Minnesota's turn to lose. That's how that's going to work in the Big Ten this year.
I mean, it's not unfair. Yeah.
Right, they've been playing too well. Wisconsin was playing too well, so then they had to lose. It's just how it goes. It's not because I don't like Minnesota. I agree with everything you said, Chris. It's just that you can't win that many games in a row. It's illegal, apparently.
In the Big Ten.
Not allowed in that conference. Yeah.
And not that they have this massive winning streak, but the start to the season overall, it's just been too good.
And I also think that, Michigan State sucks right now.
Sure.
And it was at home.
Mm-hmm.
They did to Iowa what we always have worried teams maybe be able to do to Iowa. And they still needed overtime to beat them at home. My point being is that while these are 2 wins that Minnesota, I never thought Minnesota would get this season, and certainly not as convincingly as they got the one against Michigan State, it might have been... They're good wins. I'm not sure it's quite as indicative of how good this basketball team is. I still don't think this is a basketball team that goes on the road and wins at Wisconsin. I think one of the great parts about having a very experienced team in the Big Ten is that they know that you really need to not lose 2 straight games at home in the Big Ten. I find it hard to believe that a Wisconsin team that's led by 5 seniors is going to lose 2 straight games at home. I'm going to go with the Badgers and their experience. I still am... I want to see more from Minnesota on the road. They went to Illinois and lost by 30. That's what happened when they went on the road against a good team. And I think Wisconsin, at the very least, is a comparable team to Illinois, right? They play 2 completely different brands of basketball. But they went on the road and got just schlocked, right? They just got put in the dirt really, really quickly. And Wisconsin is also a team of a similar caliber, if not better caliber, than Illinois. So I'm going with the Badgers. Real quick, Josh, we gotta give Michigan State some crap. You want to guess how many points starters scored against Minnesota?
Oh, I mean, AJ Hoggard was their best player, so.
Well, Aaron Henry, 11 points on 3 of 10 shooting. But how many? But he didn't start.
He also got benched.
Right. So
25.
I forgot what the number actually was. 26
points. Oh my goodness.
There you go. Oh my. So you're just on a roll today.
First of all, shouts to my boy Foster Lawyer for getting into the starting lineup. But but 2 of 4, 1 of 8, 1 of 9, 2 of 6, 2 of 10. Those were the starters for Michigan State. They scored 26 points combined. It was very, very ugly. That's not a good basketball team right now. I was just surfing, and when Foster Lawyer, who played 18 minutes and had 8 points, is your most prolific from an efficiency and just total number of points perspective, that's not a good day, and you're probably going to lose to Minnesota by 25 like they did. Anyways, moving on to our last game of the Final 5. Texas, Kansas. Listen, I was pretty high on Texas coming into this season. I thought they had the chance to be a really big part of the Big 12. But I didn't think we'd get to the point where we're talking about this game, and these are two teams in the top 8 of the AP poll. Texas, but lo and behold, here we are. Texas, Kansas. Josh, who you got?
Kansas. I have a personal policy. I don't pick against Kansas at home.
Or in the Big 12, to be honest with you.
Generally.
Yeah.
You're a little bit stricter on that than I am.
Right, because they've clearly not backed me up on that.
Right.
But no, right. At home, it's silly to ever pick against them at home in Big 12 play, regardless of how good the other team is. Anything else? Do you got anything else to say, Josh? Anything you want to add, or it's Kansas at home?
Kansas at home.
Okay, fair. Chris, what do you got?
I go Kansas as well. I'll just add this. If you like defense, this is your game. When I looked last night, Texas was 4th in defensive efficiency. Ken Palm, Kansas was 8th. So if you like defense, enjoy this game. If you want offense, watch the bowl game tonight. But if you want defense, watch this college basketball game. That's how you get your fix on those two areas. It's going to be points are going to be at a premium in this one. But I'm going with Kansas for that same very simple reason.
I'm going with the with the Jayhawks as well. It'll be 13 days since the last time Texas played by the time this game is played. They beat Oklahoma State 77-74 on December 20th. That was the last time they played a game. It might have been a similar length of time for Kansas, but Texas had a game postponed in there. The last time Kansas played was against West Virginia. That was on December 22nd. So a bit of a break for both teams, a slightly longer one for Texas, but it's Kansas at home. And I still, I have questions about Texas's ability. They just depend so much on that backcourt. And when you have Marcus Garrett to put on Matt Coleman, I have serious questions about Texas being able to score enough points to beat a good basketball team, even one like Kansas that has had their nights where they just can't get the ball to go through the orange ring to save their lives. Texas having Matt Coleman neutralized like that, or in theory, is something I'm nervous about. So I'm going with the Jayhawks as well. It's 10:56, so we'll just jump right here. We'll go flying into what are you watching? Best game of the weekend, most interesting game of the weekend. Mr. Brown, what do you got?
Yeah, so my best game of the weekend is the Cotton Bowl, Oklahoma, Florida. We've already talked about it in length, so I don't have too much to add on it. I just think that, we've talked about all the storylines. I just am really looking forward to this game. Yeah, I don't even really have anything else to add. This is my best game of the weekend. I will say for my most interesting game, I'll jump to that. I came up with a game, and I had forgotten that this was about the whole weekend rather than just today.
You came up with one? You came up with one? Did you create one out of
I didn't create a game. Yes. I got the teams together.
Classic.
The Chris Brown Classic. I'm here for that.
I have that kind of power. Yes. No, I had it in my head that I was just looking at tomorrow's schedule or today's schedule now, rather than looking at the whole weekend, the whole next few days. But you know what? I'm going to stick with it. I'm intrigued by Tennessee, Missouri, 2 of the 4 remaining undefeated SEC teams in Columbia tonight in a top 15 matchup. I'm interested to see Tennessee. They've got an incredible 3rd-ranked defense in the country, but it's their first game on the road this season.
Yep. It's
also their first game against a top 50 team at Ken Palm since playing Colorado in their season opener. So I just want to know what this Tennessee team is. And I think Missouri will be a decent way to help get some better idea how high this Tennessee team's ceiling is. Missouri is a team that really interests me. Of course, they beat Illinois back in mid-December, but they just barely snuck by Bradley last week. And that's just not the kind of shooting performance, not the kind of thing that can happen if you're really made those significant strides. So I'm kind of confused what this Missouri team is right now. It's a veteran team. It's a team that hasn't allowed many huge scoring outputs for an opponent this season. But these are both teams that I just have that I'm intrigued by, right? It's a top 12 matchup. But both teams that I'm wondering what these teams exactly are. And I think that against each other, we're going to learn something about what those teams are. So It's a matchup I'm interested in. It's tonight. Apparently, I have a lot of sports I need to try to watch tonight,
Hmm.
based on what I've been saying. But so yeah, those are my best and most interesting games.
And also, we're going to find out how serious Missouri is about trying to win this conference, because they do play
Yeah.
Tennessee twice. But if you lose to Tennessee here in Columbia, you're probably not going to beat them in Knoxville. And if you lose to Tennessee twice, it's going to be really, really hard to win this conference.
Yeah.
If they're serious about winning it, you probably have to win this game, or at least convince me that there's a chance that you could maybe upset them in Knoxville. But the easiest route, of course, is to beat them at home if you're serious about trying to contend for an SEC title, because, right, we've talked about the SEC. It's weird at the very best and just plain bad at the worst, right? Tennessee is not going to lose a ton of games in conference this year. I mean, they're just not. So the best way to make up ground against them is to beat them, because you're probably not going to get a lot of games that they lose that you're going to win. So that's a good one. I like that. Josh, best, most interesting?
Best game, Clemson, Ohio State. You got the drama from the previous matchup. It's probably the final college game for one of Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence. You've got this bulletin board material because Dabo Swinney doesn't think Ohio State is good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on here. I'm really excited. I really think this is going to be a good game. My most intriguing game, I went a little off the radar.
Okay.
San Francisco at Gonzaga.
Okay. I can't wait for your most interesting game to be a 30-point blowout.
Well, and that's the exact reason is, look, if this game isn't close, Gonzaga's not, without fans especially, Gonzaga's at home for this game, so of course San Francisco gets the home rematch eventually. But if this game isn't close, I just have no belief at all that anybody in the WCC is beating Gonzaga. So we're going to see, because San Francisco is a good team with some good wins, obviously the Virginia one. I'm intrigued because I want to know if this game is going to be competitive, not because I actually think it's an intriguing game, if that makes sense.
That's a completely fair way.
I get that now. It makes more sense to me now than when you first brought it up. I was like, what are you talking about?
Chris was about to call you a moron.
I was about to say, like, what, do you get excited by blowouts? Or you're like, yeah, 30 points, 35, 40, yeah.
I like that. Can they cover? No, it's a good point, because I think that's the last question to ask about Gonzaga is, or do they get challenged at some point in conference play? Right now, I think the answer is no. Even when they don't shoot it well, they're just so much better than you, and also they just never don't shoot it well, right? Because somebody shoots it well, and that's typically enough with how much talent they have. My best game is also that college football playoff semifinal, Ohio State and Clemson. There's a lot surrounding it. I think it'll be competitive. Right, and when you say that you don't think Ohio State's good, you got to go beat Ohio State. Like Dabo now has no choice. He has to go win the football game. And so I do think that'll end up being one of the best games of the weekend. I am going to go. I was caught off guard. I forgot to go find a most interesting game. I apologize for being behind the 8 ball here. I think I'm going to go Iowa-Rutgers.
I thought about that one.
Yeah.
Because if Rutgers, Rutgers really just might have found the secret sauce at home. They really might just never lose at home, even without fans.
Something about the rack.
Something about the rack, man. I'm telling you. Rutgers is 3-1 in the Big Ten. If you're 3-1 if they get to the point where they're 4-1 in the Big Ten and they've already got wins over Illinois and Iowa, then we're talking about putting yourself in a situation to really contend to win this conference. Because that's what the Big Ten is, especially when your games at home against the good teams, right? That's one of the most, right. Beat the bad teams, beat all the bad teams you're supposed to beat. Bad teams. There aren't a lot of them in the Big Ten. That's become very clear. But also find a way to win your home games against the teams that are also really good and sometimes might be considered better than you. I think most people would still consider Iowa the better basketball team against Rutgers, but it's certainly comparable and intriguing. And this is the type of game that Rutgers just hasn't lost since, like 2018. It doesn't matter who they play at home. They just beat that team at home. So I'll be watching that one as well. And Iowa just continues to intrigue me. They played much better defense against Northwestern than they did in their previous couple of games. Does that continue? Rutgers has the playmaking abilities to put some more pressure on Iowa. Northwestern's a very good basketball team, but there's nobody on that team that's really putting a lot of fear into you as an individual playmaker. Rutgers definitely has those guys, whether it's Ron Harper Jr. or Jacob Young or Geo Baker, whoever it might be. So that's I'm going to be watching that one on Saturday. Thank you so much for watching today's edition of 110 Daily. 110 Daily off for the rest of the week. We'll be back on Monday. We'll talk about everything we've talked about today in a preview, and we'll talk about it after it's happened. And jump right into the new year. Have a safe, happy, healthy new year. COVID-19 is not taking the new year off, so, maybe follow those rules still, but still try to have a very happy new year, safe new year. We'll be back on Monday. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you on Monday.